South Park has, these dictators, right? Basically, Saddam Hussein was parody for a long time, and then now you have Donald Trump talking the exact same way. So this is what I call the South Park dictator. And the thing that the sort of the catchphrase he always says here is, relax, guy, right? And I didn't really get that for a long time until I kind of thought about um, just intentionally, like, why do he keep saying that? Why does he keep saying it's kind of catchy? He goes, "Relax, guy," and um, really, I kind of thought about how actually a lot of people I know, unfortunately, they have this sort of attitude that um, if if you're suffering through a problem, you should relax. You shouldn't take it so seriously. Life is short, and nothing is more important than your health, and these things will pass. And you've heard all these cliches, haven't you? They sound familiar. So you have that kind of attitude, but then when something personally affects them, when something becomes a problem in their life, then they get really upset. Then everybody has to drop everything, fix that problem as soon as possible. There could be nothing more important. That's their attitude. Okay. And I thought about how they're kind of like this person that goes around saying, "Hey, relax, guy," just making your problems, the things that hurt you, into no big deal. Really minimizing your suffering. Okay. And it's ultimately very hypocritical. And I kind of thought about that because one of the things that you look at when you're studying ancient philosophy like Plato, right, like Socrates, and you look at Plato's Republic, and you notice that he's talking about different kinds of governments. He's talking about democracy, and he's talking about tyranny. And I think that part about tyranny is one of the most misunderstood parts actually in the republic because I think people look at tyranny and think, oh, I know what tyranny is. Okay, I think I know what that is. And they look at democracy and they go, oh, he's just talking about democracy and there's no, there's some problems with it that he points out. But the critique is a lot more scathing and comprehensive than people really give it credit for. What he's saying is that when you have democracy, you have inherent problems. Okay, we won't get into all that today, but we have something that we might call today, instead of late stage capitalism, we want to call it maybe late stage democracy. So democracy is established and you have problems from the very beginning, and they mature. And they mature into worse problems, okay? And to the point where you are ready to have a tyrant. But the tyrant is not just one man in Plato's Republic. The tyrant is a kind of person, not just a single dictator leader, but a kind of person that populates throughout the whole society. Okay, because when we're talking about these different kinds of governments, aristocracy, democracy, which is ruled by those with status, um, oligarchy, ruled by those with money as a requirement, democracy, right, ruled by all citizens in terms of equality, on the basis of equality, and then finally tyranny. We're not really talking so much about the structure of government, but really the character of the culture underneath that. That's really one of the bulk of the discussion takes place. And so once we realize that, we know that when we're talking about democracy, we're not just talking about people, oh, they're acting like a mob, they don't really know enough information, they make the wrong decisions. That's part of it. That's why Socrates in Plato's Republic talks about, uh, who do you want to be in charge of your ship if you're on a vessel, right? You want the guy with the most experience and knowledge, not put it to a vote. Okay. So there's an efficiency argument there, but the bulk of book eight and book nine is about the culture. Okay. So in a democracy, everything is about equality and personal freedom, and that has its own implications. But as it matures, we get into this sort of hyper consumerism and this sort of hyper appetitive way of living about the world, meaning everything's about your desires and fulfilling them, like these sort of petty desires, not these more noble desires of truth and justice and reason, but these more petty desires like food and, you know, um, other sorts of consumables. Okay, you can figure out what that means on your own. But it's a very kind of materialistic mentality. That might be the word we want to use for today, in this era, this contemporary modern era. So when we get to the tyrant and tyrannical personality, Socrates says he's all about love. And that was a passage, that was a line that really kind of confused me for a while because isn't love good? Okay. But there's a certain sarcasm in there that isn't quite complete sarcasm. He's not saying actually the tyrannical man is all about hate. He's saying no, it is a kind of love, but it's a very kind of superficial love. What he means is sort of a consumptive desire. Okay. So this is not the kind of love that a son might have for his father. This is not the kind of love that God has for his creation. This is a kind of more of a possessive, kind of consumptive love. Okay. So the kind of love that a man might not have for his wife, but rather the kind of love that he might have for food, or for somebody he calls a girlfriend, but really in a sense treats it like a prostitute, because in a sense he knows this is his woman, but he has no intent of wanting to keep her forever. Okay. Wanting to really be committed to her forever. Okay. So that's the kind of quote unquote love that he's saying. And that's the degree of sarcasm he's making. Right. So when we're talking about this kind of person, right, he's all about love and he's all about acceptance until it personally gets in the way of what he personally wants. Okay. So in this way, he's all about love. So this whole thing about, having Saddam Hussein or nowadays Trump go around saying, hey, relax, guy, right? Whenever somebody's like, hey, this isn't going right, this isn't right morally, or this is causing me problems, and he goes, hey, relax, guy, take a break. He's saying that because he's not really taking your problems seriously. Okay. But the moment you see that there's some problem for him, he gets very upset. And I'm saying that's the tyrannical personality. Okay. You might call it a narcissist these days or whatever, but it's the same idea. Okay. Plato has written about this. Okay. Socrates has talked about this. Okay. Thousands of years into the past. Okay. And this is something that comes out in late stage democracy, because in democracy, everything is about individual opinion. Everything is morally relativistic. Okay. There's no such thing as objective morality. So these people will always, will almost tend to insist to you, they'll tend to insist to you that there's, don't judge other people, right? What they're really saying is don't judge me, but they're saying don't judge people, right? Don't, you know, um, what are you going to do, right? There's no such thing as really right and wrong. You just kind of deal with life, you just move on, etc. And that's to me the epitome of this whole, hey, relax, guy, take a break, right? Whenever you do bring up something valid, whenever you do bring up a real problem, they're the first ones to dismiss it, but they're also the first ones to get really upset when the problem becomes their problem.